Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brothers, sisters, viewers and friends of Ikra TV, welcome to another edition of Real Talk. I'm your host Iqbal Bana. I come into your homes week in, week out, hopefully trying to bring something of interest to you that you may find useful in your day-to-day lives. In the past, we've spoken about a number of issues that affect us around health, education, social work, hate crime, for example, anti-Muslim hate crime, Islamophobia, etc. And very rarely have I brought somebody as unique as I have today as my guest, a person from the business community and entrepreneurial community, as well as philanthropy, a man who I met about a year and a half ago, and from the day I met him, I've never found anybody as entertaining, exciting, empowering, and much more motivational than anybody else. And he is somebody that has inspired me over the last year and a half that I've met him. And I'm really deeply honored that he's taken the time out. He especially traveled all the way from London to come to Bradford today to join me today on the sofa. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear friends, can I introduce my real good friend, Asif Rangoonwala, as I say, who's an entrepreneur, a businessman, a very successful businessman who has created a number of businesses, but much more importantly, he gives a lot back into the community. His family originally is from Pakistan, but he's moved around the world. He's worked at the highest level of commerce and industry and in the finance sector as well. And now he manages a number of businesses around the UK and around the world as well, I'm sure. But much more importantly, he is a philanthropist and a person who is deeply committed to giving something back into the community. So we're going to talk about all these aspects of his life. So Asif bhai, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome. Can we just briefly, my viewers, I'm sure will find your life story as I did, really, really interesting. Where were you, where do you originally come, your family come from? Were you born in the subcontinent? Were you born, in Asia, or were you born in the UK? Where were you born?
So, assalamu alaikum, first of all, and Iqbal bhai, thank you for having me on this show today.
You're more than welcome.
I really believe that the community in the UK requires more interviews, not of myself, but of other people who are in a similar position or even in better positions. And I thank you for having me here.
It's my pleasure.
So let me just kick it off with saying that, I started my own life in a humble way, where I was in school till the age of 16, and then I had to leave for various reasons. And in those days, my father was a very tough guy, and he told me that, look, son, you have two choices. Either you go and find your own way, or you come and work for me.
Right.
So I started to work at the age of 17.
MashaAllah.
And I worked my way up. I've been from service industries to manufacturing to finance to property development. And by 1992, I came here. Just going back a little bit, I was born in 1957. My family was from Pakistan, but my mother, being originally, we were all Indians, so she living from Maharashtra state in Mumbai. We all were born in Mumbai, but we came back to Pakistan immediately.
Right. So you saw the light.
Yeah.
The family saw the light, did they?
Well, my father was one of the builders of Pakistan, so that's where we came back to. Yeah. And I left Pakistan when I was 10 years old.
Right.
And I did most of my education in Europe.
Right.
And again, when I was 17, I did my first 3 months internship in a European city by the name of Rotterdam.
Right.
I worked there for 3 months, and then I went back to Pakistan. I survived in Pakistan from 76 till 81, when I lived in Malaysia for a couple of years.
Right.
Then came back again to Pakistan in 83 and worked there till 87. Then I moved to the Far East in 87.
So you've been around the world.
Yeah, I've been around for a bit.
Were you the owner of one of the largest bun making, the burger buns?
Yes, I
was. Were you the owner of the largest bun making company in the whole of Europe?
You're absolutely right. We were actually the largest manufacturers of hamburger buns in the UK.
Right.
And we were most probably ranked. We were ranked 10 in all over Europe.
Right.
And we were ranked number 2 or 3 in the UK at that time.
Wow. So you built up this empire.
Yes, we did. And that was one of the opportunities I got when I I'd been here from 92 to 98, and I got this opportunity in the beginning of 98.
Right.
And I took it on. And I must say, by 2008, when I sold the business, we had literally 85% of the business in the UK.
So you supplied 85% of the burger buns.
All hamburger buns and hot dog rolls in the UK.
Wow,
were supplied.
subhanallah.
Yeah,
My goodness.
God was very kind. Of course, and I must clarify that so people don't misunderstand. That was 100% frozen.
Right.
Because shelf life of frozen products goes a lot longer.
Longer, yeah.
Longer than
So
fresh.
I suppose all the takeaways, whether it's McDonald's or whoever it is.
Anybody who, even today, by the way, that business still exists.
Right.
And I think they've even gotten bigger.
Oh, right.
And they've done even better.
So you started it. And
I
you
started
you received a Queen's Award for Enterprise.
We got a Queen's Award for Enterprise in 2006 or 2007, where what we did was by providing we had a unique selling point on the product, which was a sponge and dough. So anybody who understands baking will understand sponge and dough, whereas the original product, which was, again, one of the large UK manufacturers, they were using a direct dough system and not allowing the dough to ferment, whereas we brought in the American system of baking and allowed the dough. So it was equivalent to a McDonald's or a Burger King.
Right.
The only difference was in the McDonald's and Burger King, they use a very high sugar content, and our sugar content was about a quarter of that.
Oh, so it was healthy as well.
So our product was much
so
healthier.
how long did it take you to build up this massive enterprise?
So
supplying 85%.
I can tell you, I can give you some stats on that. I started with one plant which was manufacturing 35,000 buns an hour.
Oh, wow.
And by the time I finished, I had 9 plants. We were manufacturing 140,000 buns an hour, 363 days of the year.
Good gracious.
24/7, we never stopped. But again, it was all automated plants, all big equipment. We had 4 French bread lines, so most of the supply to Morrison's and Tesco's was being done by us.
All right.
Including some of the finishers. Yes, it was. Look, again, I think one is God, of course.
Definitely.
Allah has had a big hand in this. And I think my parents' prayers were with me. Because I went independent on my own, and I created this maybe against a little bit of my family's wishes. But I think when you are an entrepreneur, you need to get the shackles off.
You have to take some risks.
You have to take the risks and get the shackles off. And as I said, first of all, God, then my parents, and then it takes a lot of hard work.
Oh, definitely.
My plants were up in Milton Keynes.
So you had 9 factories?
No, I had 9 plants.
9 plants, so sorry.
I had over 10 acres of factory.
Right.
Okay, it was a very large site.
Right.
And I had 472 employees, of which I must say about 80% of them were British Pakistanis from Luton and Bedford. Luton and Watford.
Right.
And I was famous in Luton and Watford.
MashaAllah, subhanAllah. So obviously, you are a very successful business, and you moved away from that into a sort of other areas of business, in sort of property, finance, etc., etc. But I'm really intrigued to learn that you are also the chair of the P1. Now, for my viewers who don't, and I didn't know this until I read this, everybody would have heard of the F1, which is the Formula 1 racing. P1 is the equivalent of Formula 1 racing, but it's speedboats.
Yes.
Right? So you are the owner and chair of P1, which is equivalent to, you are the Bernie Ecclestone of the speedboat racing. Are you?
I think there was an ambition of sorts in that form, but again, I think the racing on the water was never really a sport. It was more of a hobby for people. And I saw this opportunity in 2003, and I decided I would take it on.
Right.
And so I started with a big fortune, and now I have a small one because of this sport. But my son actually runs that now.
Right.
And we are still operating. He's mashallah, he's on his way to Saudi Arabia tomorrow to discuss with the government of Saudi Arabia about having some of the events there. And the sport still exists in the US very, very strongly. I have now converted it from a hobby into a motorsport, which is accepted globally.
Right.
And yes, I think
it's unusual to find a Pakistani Muslim involved in these sort of activities. I mean, you know, the World Championship for powerboat racing, P1, you know, the top of the speedboats. I mean, where did this interest come from?
Look, again, I think it was part of the entrepreneur in myself. I think I saw the opportunity. So, you know, they talk about if you're reading books on economics, you've got blue oceans and red oceans. So in terms of motorsport, if you look at the car industry or the motorcycle industry, they're red ocean because there's so many of them. But if you look at the boats, doesn't even exist. Forget about, you know, it being a mature sport. It's never been a sport. It's been, as I said, a hobby for big checkbooks and for rich people.
For very rich people.
For the very rich people. And what we did was we downsized the boats. We made it affordable. Affordable to the extent where, again, as I said, this is about human skill. This is not about the size of your engines. So, again, racing on water is very, I can put it in the words of Niki Lauda. We didn't have him, but the people who were in this industry had him before in a boat. And he said it's like driving a Formula One car without any brakes. So that's the difference, because there are no brakes in the water.
Yeah, exactly,
right?
yeah.
And you have to be able to understand the currents and the flow of the water. But I think if you are a driver, you get the racing line.
So do you drive yourself?
I do. I don't race them. My son raced boats.
Right.
But I did have to inform him that he couldn't win. And he said, why? So I said, well, it's a conflict of interest because you're part of the ownership structure. If you win, they'll all think you have manipulated it. So anyways, but now he moved on past that. He's built about 40 boats himself.
Right, mashallah.
Yeah, he's an engineer by profession, and he's done really, really well. I think today in the community of powerboat racing, I would say if I was ever to say, and which hopefully one day we'll prove to be right, with God's help, he will be the Bernie in powerboat racing.
But you started it off.
I started it.
You started it off. Yes. So he's going to enjoy the fruit. I'm sure you must have enjoyed sort of going around the world with powerboat.
Look, I had a really, really good opportunity to build something. I believe that maybe I got sidetracked by so many of my other interests in not only just in business, but also in the, the social enterprise side, which is really actually more and more of my focus as time went by. So, yes, maybe I should have worked harder, but thank God for my son. Alhamdulillah, he's a real star.
MashaAllah. I'm sure he takes the chip of the old block, as they say. Because your DNA must be in there.
That's very kind.
No, I mean, Asif, I've known you for just as I say over a year and a half, and every time I've met you, I've been impressed with your enthusiasm. That's the first thing. Your zest for life, but much more importantly, what I've noticed about you is you want to help other people.
Yes.
Who aspire to go into business or into other fields, to try and get them the opportunity, give them the opportunity, if they're struggling, to also achieve what they're setting out to do. And that's where your British Pakistani Foundation, and I didn't say this at the top of the program, he is also very much involved in the British Pakistani Foundation that he established. The purpose behind that was to help young Pakistani Muslim men and women, boys and girls, who have ambition to either go into business or into a profession, to try and get to that objective that they have set. So, and this is something that you really is passionate about, aren't you?
Yes.
And you have this this program you set up called the Aspire Mentorship Program and the Legacy Project.
That's right.
Can we come back to that in a minute? But in terms of your business, obviously experience and knowledge, how do you see the economy of this country? We're living in very challenging times at this moment.
Yes, we are.
Right? And people are struggling all over the place. How do you see the economy moving over the next, say, 2 to 5 years?
So one thing, Iqbal bhai, I've always been a glass half full.
Right.
I'm not a glass half empty. So I take an optimistic view. I think it's about hard work. In all our lives, we've seen the ups and downs. We were talking just now before the show, how you came here and all the things you had to do. So I think as human beings, one must always look forward rather than looking backwards. And looking forward in the next 3 to 5 years Actually, the UK economy is an extremely vibrant economy. Okay, yes, we've got our ups and downs. There are a lot of issues, but there are a lot of issues globally. My own personal, as I said, I'm an uneducated man, but having worked
No
now,
chance.
having worked for 47 years of my life now, I find that one of the things that really people are failing to understand is that in the last 22 years, the world population has increased by 2 billion people. Okay, so are we really talking about an economic recession, or are we talking about a demand-supply issue?
Right.
Okay, are we talking about a logistics problem because of the backup of COVID and all of that? So I'm not convinced that this is an economic recession. I don't see, I mean, I meet a lot of business people. Yes, you have ups and downs in business, but most people are thriving. There's a lot of money being made by business people, by enterprises in this country. I just feel that, and maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but you know, now that we're talking, I'm not going to hold my punches. I think there's a lot of mismanagement on the government side because of the lack of understanding of how entrepreneurs, you know, we are builders. We can make things work. We can make changes when it's due. If you're not an entrepreneur and you know you are being given millions and billions to administer, and you don't, if you're not
You have the
pragmatic
knowledge, yeah.
and you're not practical, you're going to stick to the rules. Well, the rules don't always work. Meaning the theory.
Yes.
The theory doesn't always work. You have to make changes. You have to make cuts or whatever it is. And I think this is where maybe there needs to be more people, again, from enterprise and entrepreneurs who need to be involved in the administration.
I mean, this is the
side.
accusation that is usually placed on the public sector, that people who work in the public sector don't have the reality check. They don't know what is happening in reality. And they, like you say, they follow the rules all the time. And obviously, that is something, that accusation that has been made by a number of people, people across, you know, different. I mean, it depends which side of the political divide you probably are from as well. But you know, this is something, having worked in the public sector myself,
You understand.
I know some of the challenges that they face, and on the other side, some of the restrictions that are placed on people in becoming sort of let's say risk takers, and that's one of the issues. I'm sorry, we're going for a break now. We'll take a short break. Inshallah, we'll be back very soon. As I say, go to the kitchen or wherever you want, make yourself a faluda, a cup of chai, or you know, coffee, whatever it is that you like, and then we'll be back with you soon. Talk to Asif much more about his philanthropical side, which I'm sure you'll find much more interesting, if already what you said is not interesting to you. Inshallah, I'll be back with you soon. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.